The sound of breaking glass shattered the afternoon silence, and Isaac Whitmore knew in that instant his life was about to change forever, though he could never have predicted just how much. He stood frozen in the doorway of his own bedroom, watching his wife Margaret writhing beneath their hired hand, Thomas Barrett, the man Isaac had trusted to help work their ranch just outside Cherry Creek, Nevada. The year was 1878, and betrayal tasted like dust and copper in his mouth. Margaret's eyes met his, wide with shock but not remorse. Thomas scrambled off the bed, reaching for his trousers, stammering excuses that Isaac didn't hear through the roaring in his ears. Isaac turned and walked out, his boots heavy on the wooden floorboards, each step echoing through the modest ranch house he had built with his own 2 hands. He didn't yell, didn't rage, didn't throw a single punch. The silence was worse than any violence could have been. Behind him, he heard Margaret calling his name, her voice shrill and defensive. Thomas fled out the back, and Isaac kept walking until he reached the barn, where he saddled his horse with mechanical precision. His hands shook only once when he tightened the cinch, and then the shock settled into something cold and hard in his chest. At 32 years old, he had thought he had everything figured out. The ranch was prospering, his wife was beautiful, and life in Nevada territory was good despite the harsh desert landscape. Now it all seemed like a lie written in sand. He rode toward town, not knowing where else to go, not wanting to be anywhere near that house. The September sun beat down mercilessly, and the sagebrush stretched endlessly in all directions. Cherry Creek was a small mining town that had seen better days, but it still had a general store, a saloon, and a church. Isaac tied his horse outside the saloon, then changed his mind. He wasn't a drinking man, and drowning his sorrows seemed too predictable, too weak. Instead, he found himself walking toward the edge of town, past the assayer's office and the boarding house, until he reached a small house with a neat garden that seemed impossible in this dry climate. Someone had clearly spent hours coaxing life from the stubborn Nevada soil. He stopped because he heard crying, quiet sobs that carried through an open window. Isaac hesitated, knowing he should mind his own business, but something in those sobs resonated with the fresh wound in his chest. He knocked on the door, and the crying stopped abruptly. Footsteps approached, and the door opened a crack. The woman who peered out had red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun and brown eyes that assessed him warily. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I heard crying," Isaac said, then felt foolish. "I apologize, madam. I shouldn't have intruded." She studied him for a long moment, and something in his face must have convinced her he meant no harm. She opened the door wider. "You look like someone who understands," she said quietly. "I'm Amelia Zimmerman, Isaac Whitmore." He removed his hat, holding it in both hands. "I don't mean to bother you. I was just walking and—" "Come in," she interrupted. "I think we might both need someone to talk to today." Her house was small but immaculate, with lace curtains and dried flowers in vases. She gestured him to a chair at the kitchen table and put a kettle on the stove. Isaac sat, feeling strange and out of place, but also oddly relieved to be somewhere that wasn't his own house with its contaminated bedroom. "I caught my husband with another woman today," Amelia said without preamble, her back to him as she prepared tea. 3 hours ago, to be exact. In our bed, with the widow Morrison from the boarding house. Isaac felt his breath leave him in a rush. "I caught my wife this afternoon, too, with our hired hand." Amelia turned to face him, and their eyes met with a shared understanding that needed no further explanation. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "What a pair we make." She brought 2 cups to the table and sat across from him. I married Robert Zimmerman 2 years ago. He worked at the assayer's office, steady job, good income. Or so I thought. Turns out he's been gambling away our money and consoling himself with Mrs. Morrison for the past 6 months. How did you find out? Isaac asked, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. He told me. Her voice cracked. This morning he announced he was leaving me for her. Said I was too boring, too focused on keeping house instead of being exciting. Then he packed his things and left. I came back from the general store this afternoon and found a note saying he'd taken what money we had left and was heading to California with her. They took the afternoon stage. Isaac felt anger rising on her behalf. He just left you here with nothing. Not nothing. I have the house, at least. It was my mother's before she passed. But I have very little money, and a woman alone in a mining town doesn't have many prospects. She sipped her tea, her hands trembling slightly. I've been crying all afternoon, feeling sorry for myself, wondering what I did wrong. You did nothing wrong, Isaac said firmly. Neither did I. They made their choices. Did your wife leave with the hired hand? I don't know, I left. Just saddled my horse and rode away. He realized how cowardly that sounded. I suppose I'll have to go back eventually and deal with it. What will you do? Send her back to her family in California, I suppose. Divorce her if I can manage it. The word tasted strange in his mouth. Divorce was scandalous, but what choice did he have? The ranch is mine. Her father helped with some of the stock, but I built everything else. I suppose he'll want his money back. They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea, two wounded people finding unexpected comfort in shared misery. Amelia had a quiet strength about her that Isaac admired. Despite her tears, she sat straight-backed and composed, facing her catastrophe with dignity. I should go, Isaac said finally, though he was reluctant to leave this peaceful space. I've imposed enough. You haven't imposed, Amelia said. Thank you for knocking. I think I needed to say all that out loud to someone who would understand. Isaac stood, then hesitated. If you need anything, my ranch is about 5 miles northeast of town. The Whitmore place. If you need work or help with anything, please come find me. She gave him a small, genuine smile, the first he'd seen from her. That's kind of you. I'll remember. He rode back to his ranch as the sun began to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple. When he arrived, he found Margaret waiting on the porch, her face defiant. Thomas was nowhere to be seen, likely halfway to the next county by now. You have no right to judge me, Margaret said before he could speak. You're never here. You love this ranch more than you ever loved me. That doesn't excuse what you did, Isaac replied, his voice calm despite the anger simmering beneath. Pack your things. I'll arrange for you to go back to your family. You're divorcing me. She looked genuinely shocked, as if she had expected him to just accept her betrayal. What did you think would happen, Margaret? Did you expect me to forgive you and pretend it never occurred? Other men would. I'm not other men. He walked past her into the house. You have 3 days. Then I'm taking you to the stage station whether you're ready or not. The next 3 days were the longest of Isaac's life. Margaret alternated between tears, rage, and attempts at seduction. He slept in the barn and spoke to her only when necessary. He arranged for a lawyer in town to begin divorce proceedings, knowing it would take months or even years to finalize. On the 3rd day, he drove her to the stage station in his wagon, her trunk loaded with her belongings. You'll regret this, Margaret said as she boarded. You'll be alone out there and you'll realize what you gave up. Goodbye, Margaret, was all he said. He watched the stage disappear in a cloud of dust, then turned the wagon toward town. He had supplies to buy, and if he was honest with himself, he hoped he might run into Amelia again. Over the past 3 days, he had thought about her often, wondering how she was managing, if her husband had truly left her destitute. He found her at the general store, haggling with the owner over the price of flour. She wore a simple gray dress, and her face was pale but determined. When she saw Isaac, her expression brightened slightly. "Mr. Whitmore," she greeted him, "Mrs. Zimmerman." He touched his hat brim. "How are you faring?" "Well enough. I'm taking in sewing and laundry. The boarding house has hired me to do their linens twice a week." She lowered her voice. "It's not much, but it's something." "That's honest work," Isaac said. He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I have a proposition for you if you'll hear it." She raised an eyebrow, and he realized how that sounded. "Not that kind of proposition," he said quickly, feeling heat rise to his face. "I need someone to help at the ranch. Cooking, cleaning, tending the vegetable garden. The work my wife used to do, though she never did it well. It would be proper employment with wages and separate quarters. I have a small cabin on the property that needs some repairs, but it could be made comfortable." Amelia studied him carefully. "Why would you offer this to me? You barely know me." "Because I think we understand each other," Isaac said honestly. "Because you need work and I need help. Because I think you're trustworthy, and trust is something I value highly right now." "People will talk," she warned. "A single woman working for a married man, even one seeking divorce. Let them talk. I know my own intentions, and I think you know them too. This is honest employment, nothing more." He paused. "At least not unless something else developed naturally over time and both parties were willing." She blushed at his frankness but nodded. "I appreciate your honesty. Yes, Mr. Whitmore, I'll accept your offer. Call me Isaac, please. If we're going to be working together, we should dispense with formalities. Then you should call me Amelia." They shook hands there in the general store, sealing the arrangement while the owner watched with undisguised curiosity. Isaac helped Amelia with her purchases, then loaded them into his wagon along with his own supplies. They drove back to his ranch together, talking easily about practical matters like what repairs the cabin needed and what supplies she would require. The cabin was about 100 yards from the main house, built as guest quarters that had rarely been used. It had a single room with a fireplace, a small kitchen area, and a sleeping loft. Isaac had already spent the morning cleaning it out and replacing broken window panes. "It's not much," he said apologetically as Amelia looked around. "It's perfect," she said, and he could tell she meant it. "It's mine, and that's what matters." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a comfortable routine. Amelia proved to be an excellent cook and a tireless worker. She transformed the vegetable garden, coaxing growth from the resistant soil with the same skill he had noticed at her house in town. She baked bread that melted in Isaac's mouth, mended his clothes so skillfully that the repairs were invisible, and kept the house cleaner than it had ever been when Margaret lived there. But it was more than her domestic skills that Isaac appreciated. She was intelligent and well-read, and in the evenings they would sit on the porch and talk about books, about the changing West, about their hopes and dreams. She had wanted to be a teacher before her marriage, but had given up that dream when Robert insisted a wife's place was in the home. "You could still teach," Isaac said one evening as they watched the sunset. "Cherry Creek needs a school. Most of the children get no education at all." "I have no certificate," Amelia pointed out, "and no building. You don't need a certificate out here, just knowledge and willingness." As for a building, the old mining office on the east side of town has been empty for 2 years. I bet the owner would rent it cheap, or we could fix up my barn here for weekend lessons. She looked at him with surprise. "You would really support that? Why wouldn't I?" "You deserve to pursue your dreams, Amelia. God knows you've had enough taken from you already." Something shifted between them that night, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing steadily. Isaac had been fighting his attraction to her, knowing it was too soon, knowing people would judge them harshly. But sitting there in the fading light, watching her face light up as she talked about teaching children to read, he realized he was falling in love with her. He wasn't the only one feeling it. One evening in late October, as the desert nights grew cold, Amelia knocked on the main house door instead of heading to her cabin after dinner. Isaac opened the door to find her standing there, wrapped in a shawl, her face serious. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "Is something wrong?" "No," she said, entering but not sitting down. "Isaac, I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." He nodded, his heart beating faster. "I know it's only been 6 weeks since we made our arrangement. I know people in town already gossip about us. I know your divorce isn't final and won't be for a long time yet." She took a deep breath. "But I need you to know that I have feelings for you, real feelings, and if you don't return them, please tell me now so I can guard my heart better." Isaac closed the distance between them in 3 strides. "Amelia Zimmerman, I have had feelings for you since the day you let me into your house when we were both heartbroken. Every day since then, those feelings have grown stronger. You are the kindest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known." "Then why haven't you said anything?" she whispered. "Because I didn't want to rush you. Because I was afraid you would think I was taking advantage. Because I wanted to be sure you had healed enough to know your own heart." "I know my heart," she said firmly. "I know the difference between what I felt for Robert and what I feel for you. What Robert and I had was never real. He wanted a housekeeper and I wanted security. But this, what we have, this is real." He cupped her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Yes," he agreed. "This is real." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, both of them scarred by betrayal but willing to risk again. When they finally pulled apart, Amelia was crying, but they were good tears this time. "I'm still going to sleep in my cabin," she said with a watery smile, "until everything is proper and legal." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Isaac replied. "When we make this permanent, I want it to be right. No shadows, no scandals, no questions. It might be years before your divorce is final. Then we'll wait years. You're worth waiting for, Amelia." They did wait, though it was difficult. They continued their separate living arrangements, though their emotional intimacy deepened with each passing day. In November, Amelia began teaching lessons in Isaac's barn on Sunday afternoons. 5 children came the first week, 12 the second, 20 by the end of the month. Parents were grateful to have someone educated willing to teach their children, and Amelia glowed with purpose and joy. Isaac expanded his ranch operations, buying more cattle and hiring 2 new hands, different men this time, older and married with families of their own. He learned to trust again, carefully and slowly, but Amelia's steadfast presence made it easier. She never gave him reason to doubt her, and he saw how she watched him with love in her eyes. News came from California that Margaret had married Thomas Barrett in a hasty ceremony. Ironically, this helped Isaac's divorce case. His lawyer assured him that her adultery and quick remarriage would speed the proceedings significantly. Nevada territory had relatively progressive divorce laws compared to many places, and by March of 1879, Isaac received word that his divorce was nearly finalized. He proposed to Amelia that evening, officially this time, with a ring he had ordered from a jeweler in Virginia City. They were in her garden, where early spring was coaxing new life from the soil. He got down on one knee, proper and traditional, and asked her to be his wife. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him soundly. "Yes, Isaac Whitmore. 1,000 times yes." They were married in June of 1879 in the small church in Cherry Creek, Half the town attended, including all of Amelia's students and their families. If there was gossip, it was drowned out by genuine happiness for the couple. Everyone had seen how hard they had worked, how carefully they had conducted themselves, how devoted they were to each other. Their wedding night was everything their first marriages had not been. There was love and tenderness, passion and trust. Amelia moved her few belongings into the main house, and Isaac felt truly at peace for the first time since that awful day he had walked in on Margaret and Thomas. "You ever think about them?" Amelia asked one night, lying in his arms in the darkness. "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "Not with pain anymore, just curiosity. I wonder if they're happy, if betraying us was worth it." "I hope they're miserable," Amelia said, then laughed at herself. "That's uncharitable of me, isn't it?" "It's human. I used to hope the same thing. Now I just feel grateful. If they hadn't betrayed us, we never would have found each other." "That's true," she mused. "Strange how the worst thing that ever happened to us led to the best thing." "That's life in the West," Isaac said. "Harsh and beautiful and unexpected." Their life together was indeed all three. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Amelia's garden became legendary in Cherry Creek, producing vegetables that seemed impossible in the desert climate. She shared her knowledge freely, teaching other women her techniques, and within a few years, the whole area had more green growing things than ever before. Her school expanded too. By 1880, she had 40 students and had moved from the barn to the old mining office, which Isaac and several other fathers had renovated. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography. Several of her students went on to attend universities in California and back east, and she took fierce pride in their accomplishments. Isaac's ranch became one of the most successful in the region. He was known as a fair employer and an honest businessman. The betrayal by his former hired hand had taught him to be more careful in his hiring, but Amelia taught him not to let one bad experience close his heart to all trust. The balance made him a better rancher and a better man. In the spring of 1881, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. Isaac was overjoyed but also terrified. He had never been a father before, and the responsibility felt enormous. Amelia laughed at his worries and assured him he would be wonderful. Their son was born in December of 1881, during a rare Nevada snowstorm. They named him Daniel Isaac Whitmore, and Isaac held the tiny baby with trembling hands, overwhelmed by love and protectiveness. Amelia recovered quickly from the birth, and by the time spring arrived, she was back to teaching, with baby Daniel sleeping in a cradle in the corner of the schoolroom. "You know people will talk," Isaac teased her. "A mother bringing her baby to school." "Let them talk," Amelia said, echoing his words from years ago. "I'm not giving up teaching, and Daniel needs his mother. This is the solution." The children loved having a baby in the classroom. The older girls helped care for Daniel during lessons, learning valuable skills while Amelia taught. It was unconventional, but like so much about their life together, it worked. In 1883, Amelia gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Samuel and Grace. The ranch house rang with children's laughter, and Isaac found himself happier than he had ever imagined possible. He would watch Amelia with their children, patient and loving, and marvel at the life they had built together. Not everything was easy. There were hard years when drought threatened the ranch, times when money was tight, illnesses that scared them both. In 1884, Daniel caught pneumonia and nearly died. Isaac and Amelia took turns sitting up with him for 3 days and nights, praying and dosing him with medicine from the doctor in town. When the fever finally broke, they clung to each other and wept with relief. But through all the hardships, they faced everything together. The betrayals they had suffered had taught them the value of loyalty, and they gave each other that gift every single day. Isaac never looked at another woman. Amelia never made him doubt her devotion. They had learned the hard way what infidelity destroyed, and they protected what they had built with fierce determination. One evening in 1886, they were sitting on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Daniel was 4 now, the twins 3. Grace was chasing butterflies while Samuel and Daniel tried to catch lizards. The sun was setting over the desert, painting everything gold. "You ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't met?" Amelia asked, her hand in Isaac's. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I think I would have become hard and bitter. The betrayal would have closed my heart, and I would have lived alone out here, never trusting anyone again." "I would have survived," Amelia said, "but I wouldn't have thrived. I would have scraped by with my sewing and laundry, growing old alone, always wondering what real love felt like. Instead, we have this." Isaac gestured at the scene before them, the beautiful chaos of their life. "Instead, we have everything," Amelia agreed. In 1888, Amelia gave birth to their 4th child, another boy they named Thomas, reclaiming the name from painful associations and making it their own. By then, the ranch was well established, and they had built a larger house to accommodate their growing family. The original cabin where Amelia had first lived became a playhouse for the children. The years rolled on, marked by the ordinary miracles of family life. Daniel grew tall and serious, following his father around the ranch and learning everything about cattle and horses. Samuel was the adventurous one, always climbing things and coming home with scrapes and bruises. Grace was brilliant, inheriting her mother's love of learning, and Thomas was the charmer, able to talk his way out of any trouble. Amelia continued teaching until 1892, when enrollment had grown so large that the town finally built a proper schoolhouse and hired 2 additional teachers. She retired from formal teaching then, but continued tutoring students who needed extra help, never charging families who couldn't afford to pay. Isaac served on the town council and helped bring the railroad through Cherry Creek in 1890, opening up new markets for his cattle and bringing prosperity to the whole region. He and Amelia became pillars of the community, respected and loved by everyone who knew them. One day in 1895, a letter arrived from California. Isaac recognized the handwriting immediately, even after 17 years. It was from Margaret. He showed it to Amelia, who read it with raised eyebrows. Margaret wrote that Thomas had died of a heart attack. She was alone now and destitute, and she was writing to ask if Isaac might send her some money to help her get by. She claimed to be sorry for what she had done, though the apology felt hollow and self-serving. "What will you do?" Amelia asked, handing the letter back. Isaac walked to the fireplace and threw it in, watching it curl and blacken in the flames. "Nothing," he said. "That part of my life is long over. She made her choices, and so did I." "You don't want to help her?" Amelia asked, not judgmentally, just curiously. "She has family. Let them help her." "You and the children are my family now. My responsibility and my joy are here, not in some past that nearly destroyed me." He put his arm around Amelia's waist. "Is that cruel?" "No," Amelia said firmly. "It's honest. You owe her nothing, Isaac. She threw away what you offered her, and you built something beautiful with someone who valued it." They never heard from Margaret again. Amelia occasionally wondered what became of her, but never enough to inquire. Her own past had closed just as firmly. Robert had died in a gambling dispute in San Francisco in 1883, and Mrs. Morrison had abandoned him before that. Amelia had felt nothing but a distant sadness when she heard the news. That man had been a stranger wearing her husband's face, and she had mourned the end of that marriage long before his death. In 1898, Cherry Creek celebrated its 50th anniversary. Isaac was 62 now, his hair silver but his body still strong from years of ranch work. Amelia was 55, beautiful in the way of women who are deeply loved, her face lined with laughter more than worry. Their children were young adults now, Daniel helping run the ranch, Samuel working for the railroad, Grace studying to be a teacher like her mother, and Thomas apprenticing with a lawyer in Virginia City. At the celebration, the mayor gave a speech honoring the pioneers who had built the town. He singled out Isaac and Amelia, praising their contributions to the community. Isaac stood uncomfortably under the attention, but Amelia squeezed his hand and smiled. "We're grateful to this town," Amelia said when called upon to speak. "Cherry Creek gave us a second chance when we both needed one. It gave us a place to heal, to grow, and to build a life together. Everything good we have comes from that foundation." That night, after the celebration, they walked home hand in hand under a sky brilliant with stars. The desert air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of sagebrush and the distant promise of rain. 20 years, Isaac said wonderingly. 20 years since I knocked on your door. Best decision you ever made, Amelia teased. Second best, he corrected. The best decision was asking you to marry me. I think we can count both as one decision, she said. The decision to trust again, to love again, to believe that loyalty and devotion still existed in the world. They reached their ranch, the house glowing with lamplight, and Isaac pulled Amelia close. "I would do it all again," he said. "Every moment of pain was worth it if it led me to you." "That's the thing about loyalty," Amelia said softly. "Once you've been betrayed, you understand how precious it is. You never take it for granted. Every day you choose each other is a gift." "Then I choose you, Amelia Whitmore," Isaac said, as he had every day for 20 years. "Today and always. And I choose you, Isaac Whitmore, forever." They stood together in the doorway of their home, two people who had found each other in their darkest moments and had built a life of light. Behind them stretched years of love and loyalty. Ahead stretched whatever time God granted them, and they would face it together as they had faced everything else. The West was still wild in many ways, still harsh and unforgiving, but it had given them each other, and that made all the difference. They had learned that betrayal could break you, or it could teach you what truly mattered. They had chosen to let it teach them, and in doing so, they had discovered that real love, the kind built on trust and loyalty and mutual respect, could heal any wound and weather any storm. Years continued to pass, each one adding its own texture to their shared story. In 1902, Daniel married a rancher's daughter from the next county, and Isaac and Amelia welcomed their first grandchild, a baby girl named Amelia Rose, in 1903. Holding his granddaughter, Isaac felt the circle of life completing itself in the most beautiful way. The family that he and Amelia had created from the ashes of betrayal was now extending into another generation. Samuel never did settle down, finding joy in traveling the expanding railroad routes and sending postcards from places like San Francisco, Denver, and even Chicago. Grace married one of her fellow teachers in 1904, and they opened a boarding school for girls in Carson City. Thomas became a successful lawyer and eventually a judge, known for his fairness and wisdom. All four children credited their parents' example for their own understanding of integrity and commitment. In 1906, Isaac finally retired from active ranching, turning the daily operations over to Daniel while he and Amelia enjoyed a more leisurely pace. They traveled a bit, visiting their children and seeing places they had only read about in books. But they always returned to Cherry Creek, to the house Isaac had built and the land they had nurtured together. Amelia started a ladies' literary society that met twice a month, and Isaac joined the local historical society, preserving stories of the early days of Cherry Creek. They filled their days with grandchildren, with friends, with quiet evenings reading by the fire, with Sunday dinners that required 3 tables pushed together to accommodate everyone. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children organized a celebration at the ranch. Over 100 people came, testament to the lives Isaac and Amelia had touched over the decades. There were former students now grown with children of their own, ranch hands who had worked for Isaac over the years, fellow merchants and townspeople who considered them family. Daniel gave a speech, his voice thick with emotion. "My parents taught us that loyalty is a choice you make every day. They showed us that love is not just a feeling but an action, something you build through commitment and trust. They took broken hearts and broken lives and created something beautiful, not just for themselves but for all of us. Everything good in my life traces back to their example." Isaac and Amelia stood together, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, and listened to their children and grandchildren speak of love and family and the legacy of faithfulness. Isaac thought back to that terrible day in 1878 when he had caught Margaret with Thomas, when his world had shattered. He thought about the coincidence of walking past Amelia's house at just the right moment, hearing her tears, making the decision to knock. It had all seemed so random at the time, but looking back, he could see the pattern, the way one thing had led to another, the way pain had opened him to possibility. If Margaret had been faithful, he would have lived a comfortable but ultimately empty life. If he hadn't knocked on Amelia's door, they both might have survived their betrayals but never truly healed from them. Instead, they had found each other and built something extraordinary. Not perfect, life was never perfect, but real and solid and true. They had created a family rooted in loyalty, a home filled with love, a life that mattered. As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, Isaac and Amelia slipped away from the party and walked to the spot where they had shared their first kiss. The desert stretched around them, eternal and beautiful in its harshness. 30 years, Amelia said, echoing his words from a decade earlier. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we've always been together." "We were always meant to be together," Isaac said. "We just took the long way around to find each other." "The scenic route," Amelia joked, then grew serious. "Isaac, if I could go back and change things, prevent Robert's betrayal, I wouldn't, because it brought me to you and you are worth every tear I shed, every moment of pain I endured." "I feel the same way," Isaac said. "Margaret did me the greatest favor of my life when she betrayed me. She freed me to find real love." They stood in silence, comfortable and complete, as the stars began to appear overhead. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of their children and grandchildren, laughter and music and life continuing. This was their legacy, this family, this love, this loyalty that had started with 2 broken people willing to trust again. In the spring of 1915, Amelia became ill. The doctors in Cherry Creek couldn't identify the problem, so Isaac took her to San Francisco to see specialists. They diagnosed her with a heart condition and said there was nothing to be done except to make her comfortable. She had perhaps a year, maybe less. Isaac refused to accept it at first, seeking second and third opinions, but they all said the same thing. Finally, Amelia made him stop. "Isaac," she said gently, taking his face in her hands, "I'm 62 years old. I've had 36 years with you, 4 beautiful children and 8 grandchildren with another on the way. I've had a life beyond my wildest dreams. If this is my time, I can accept it." "I can't," Isaac said roughly, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I'm not ready to lose you." "You'll never lose me," Amelia promised. "I'll always be with you, in every sunset over the desert, in every bloom in the garden, in our children's faces and our grandchildren's laughter. We've built something that death can't destroy." They returned to Cherry Creek, and Amelia insisted on living as normally as possible for as long as she could. She tended her garden, though Daniel and his wife took over the heavy work. She attended church and her literary society meetings. She held her grandchildren and told them stories. And every evening she sat on the porch with Isaac, holding his hand and watching the desert turn gold, then purple, then silver in the fading light. "Tell me the story," she asked one evening in the fall. "Our story." So Isaac told her, starting with that awful day when he caught Margaret with Thomas, moving through his walk to town, and the sound of crying that made him knock on a stranger's door. He told of their careful courtship, their patient waiting, the joy of their wedding day. He recounted the births of their children, the growth of their ranch, the life they had built together stone by stone. "It's a good story," Amelia said when he finished. "The best story." "It's not over yet," Isaac insisted. "No," she agreed. "But when my chapter ends, yours will continue. And you'll tell this story to our grandchildren, and they'll understand what real love looks like." Amelia passed away peacefully in January of 1916, with Isaac holding her hand and their children surrounding them. Her last words were, "I would do it all again, exactly the same way." Isaac thought his heart would break all over again, but this time the breaking was different. This was grief, pure and clean, the price of having loved deeply and well. At the funeral, surrounded by hundreds of people whose lives Amelia had touched, Isaac stood straight and spoke clearly. "My wife taught me about loyalty," he said. "She showed me that betrayal, as painful as it is, can be a doorway to something better if you're willing to trust again. We were both wounded when we found each other, both betrayed by people we had trusted. We could have let that turn us bitter and closed. Instead, we chose to believe in each other, and that choice made all the difference." He lived 4 more years, years filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with the continuation of everything he and Amelia had built together. Daniel ran the ranch with the same integrity Isaac had demonstrated. Grace's school flourished. Samuel finally settled down at age 52, marrying a widow he met on a train and bringing her home to Cherry Creek. Thomas was appointed to the Territorial Supreme Court. Isaac spent his final years writing down the story of his and Amelia's life, wanting their descendants to understand the foundation on which their family was built. He wrote about betrayal and trust, about pain and healing, about loyalty as a daily choice and love as an action rather than just a feeling. On a spring evening in 1920, Isaac Whitmore died in his sleep, age 84. His last thoughts were of Amelia, of knocking on her door that day in 1878, of the life they had created together. He was buried next to her in the Cherry Creek Cemetery, under a shared headstone that reads simply, "Isaac and Amelia Whitmore. They chose loyalty." Their children found his manuscript and had it bound in leather, passing it down through generations as a family treasure. Their descendants would read it and understand that the greatest love stories are not the ones that start perfectly, but the ones where 2 wounded people find each other and choose, every single day, to be faithful, to be true, to be loyal. The ranch stayed in the family for 3 more generations. The house Isaac built stood for over 100 years. Amelia's garden, tended by her daughter and granddaughters and great-granddaughters, continued to bloom impossibly in the Nevada desert, a testament to what patience and dedication could nurture from even the harshest soil. And in Cherry Creek, now a small city rather than a mining town, the story of Isaac and Amelia Whitmore became the gold standard for what marriage should be. They had started with nothing but shared pain and a willingness to trust again. They had built a life that became a legacy, a love that transcended betrayal and lasted beyond death. Their story proved that loyalty, once broken, could be found again in unexpected places. That love, when built on trust and daily commitment, could weather any storm. That two people with every reason to be bitter could choose instead to be better, and in doing so, create something that would outlast them both. Isaac and Amelia Whitmore had found loyalty in each other when they needed it most, and they had held on to it with both hands for 36 years. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything,